Hi, 8th grade. This is lesson 1 of module 13, find volume of cylinders. And the I can statement says, I can find the volume of a cylinder or the dimensions of a cylinder given the volume. So if you have not done the Spark Your Learning, pause here and go back and do that, and then come back and we'll look at this build understanding. So the build understanding says the formula for the volume of a cylinder is similar to the formula for the volume of a rectangular prism. The formula states that the volume V is the product of the area of the base, and they use a capital B for that, and the height. The only difference is how to calculate the area of the base. You can use the fact that the base of a cylinder is a circle to write the formula in terms of the radius r. And you know that the area of a circle is, this is the formula here, pi times the radius squared. And so that's what they're using for b. So b and pi times the radius squared are the same value. So you can either write it like this, v equals the area of the base times the height, or the volume equals pi times the radius squared times the height, same thing. So pause here, go ahead and do number 1, A, B, C, and D on your own, and then we'll come back and work on them together. All right, so let's look at number 1. It says find the volume of the cylindrical can of tomato soup shown. Leave your answer in terms of pi. And A says, what information do you need to know in order to use the volume formula V equals pi times the radius squared times the height? So let's look at what we need to know or what we have to be able to use that formula. Well, we're trying to find the volume, and we know pi equals 3.14 approximately, but we don't know the radius, so we need to know the radius and the height. B, what are the radius and the height of the cylinder? Well, here they show you the radius here. The radius R equals 3.5. And then they give us the height here, H equals 10.5 centimeters. C, show how to substitute R and H in the formula, then simplify and leave your answer in terms of pi. Be sure to include an appropriate unit for the volume. So if we use the formula, it's V equals pi times the radius squared times the height. We just are going to substitute in those values. So they want it in terms of pi. We don't even need to use 3.14. And 3.5 squared times 10.5. And then if we solve that, 3.5 squared equals 12.25, or 12 and 25 hundredths. And then times 10.5, 10 and 5 tenths, that equals, so let me keep the pi there. So the volume equals pi times 128 and 625 thousandths, and you want to make sure that you use the label. So you can write it this way, or you can do 128 and 625 thousandths pi centimeters. Either way would be okay. D, now show how to use 3.14 as an approximation for pi. Round the volume to the nearest tenth. So now what they want you to do is take this 128 and 625 thousandths times 3.14, which equals approximately 403.8825. And then they say round to the nearest tenth. So this is the tenths place, so it would be approximately, we could do the little squiggly, 403.9. And it's cubic centimeters. Should have done that up here too, because it's a three-dimensional figure. So the volume is approximately 403.9 cubic centimeters. So let's look at the next page. So let's look at the step it out, and then I want you to pause and work on it on your own, and then come back and we'll go through it together. So number 2 says you can find the volume of a cylinder when you know the radius or diameter of the cylinder and its height. So this time they're going to ask you to use 22/7 for pi. So go ahead and work on this, A and B, on your own, and we'll look at those together in just a minute when you're done. All right, so hopefully you did this or you attempted to do it. Let's look at what they're doing. It says find the volume of the cylindrical vase, use 22/7 for pi. So the radius, here's the radius, is 7/2 inches. The height is 20 inches. Substitute values for the radius r and the height h, and then substitute 22/7 for pi. So they have the pi there. So this is the radius, 7/2, and then the height is 20. 7 squared is 49. 2 squared is 4. And then this is still 20. So that equals approximately 770 if you do all those calculations. So the volume of the cylinder is approximately 770 cubic inches. B, find the volume of the cylinder shown, leave the answer in terms of pi, and then use 3.14 for pi. Express the volume in scientific notation and round the first factor to the nearest tenth. So they say the diameter is 2.4 times 10 to the negative second centimeters. So the radius is half of that, so that would be 1.2 times 10 to the negative second centimeters. Now use the formula for the volume of a cylinder. Substitute values for the radius r and the height h. So pi times the radius, again we know that's 1.2 times 10 to the negative second, and the height is 4.1 times 10 to the negative second. So now you're just carrying these calculations out. So this would be 1.2 squared, which would be 1.44 squared times 10 to the negative fourth here, because that's negative 2 squared. And then this stays as 4.1 times 10 to the negative 2. Pi times, and you're going to be multiplying 1.44 times 4.1, so that's 5.904 times 10 to the negative 6, because remember we add those two together. Then we're substituting, they substituted in the 3.14, so this stays still this. And then 3.14 times 5.904 equals approximately 18.5. And then you want to change this to scientific notation, so we're going to move that decimal point, and so you have 1.85 times 10 to the negative fifth. So if we look here at this part, they're keeping pi, so they say the volume of the cylinder is this 5.904 times 10 to the negative 6 times pi, or approximately 1.9 times 10 to the negative fifth cubic centimeters. So this comes from this, but remember they said round the first factor to the nearest tenth, so that's why we round this to 1.9. So let's look at the next question. So this is number 3, and I want you to read through this and try to do it on your own. Pause the video here, work through it, and then we'll look at it together. So this problem's a little bit different. They give you the volume of the cylinder, 602 and 88 cubic feet, and they want you to find the height. So you're just solving for h in this one. So let's look at what we have. So they give you the formula again here. And so we're just going to be plugging in the numbers. So volume, 602.88 equals pi. times the radius they give you is 4 over here. So you can go through and work through the rest of A on your own. You'll get a number here for the height. And then when you want to do B, you'll fill in that height here, and you'll have the radius is 4, and pi rounded to the nearest whole number is 3. And then you can go ahead and fill in the rest of that using the formula to figure out if your answer is reasonable. So that's the end of this lesson. I'll see you in the next lesson.